It was one of those slow Saturday afternoons when time felt lazy, and the world seemed at peace. The diner smelled like bacon and maple syrup, the kind of scent that made people smile without even knowing why. Plates clattered softly, a waitress hummed along to a song playing on the radio, and sunlight poured through the windows in golden strips. At a corner booth sat Marcus Cole, a tall, quiet man in his early 40s. His hands were rough and stained with oil from the auto shop where he worked, and his faded blue shirt had his name stitched above the pocket. Across from him sat his daughter, Layla, 9 years old and full of life, trying to flick a grape into her dad's water glass when she thought he wasn't looking. Marcus caught it midair with a grin, shaking his head. "You're gonna need faster hands than that, kiddo." Layla giggled. "You've got old man reflexes, Dad. You just got lucky." "Old man, huh? Careful, or I'll make you wash the dishes." Their laughter blended with the diner's warm buzz, just another father and daughter sharing lunch. But there was something different about Marcus, something quiet in the way he carried himself. His eyes didn't dart around like most people's. He noticed everything without making it obvious. The man looked calm, ordinary, but there was a stillness in him that came from years of training to survive chaos. To everyone else, he was just another customer in a small-town diner. No one would have guessed that the man sipping coffee in the corner had once been a Navy SEAL, a shadow in places no one dared to go. Now, he was just a dad, and that was all he wanted to be. For now. Layla stabbed her pancake with her fork, pretending to be mad that her dad had stolen the last strawberry. "You always do that," she said, squinting at him. Marcus smiled, cutting a piece of his toast. "That's called training, not stealing," he said. "SEAL reflexes." She tilted her head, curious. "You mean like the animal?" Marcus laughed quietly. "Something like that." He didn't talk much about what he used to do, and Layla never pushed too hard. For her, he was just Dad, the guy who fixed cars, burned toast, and sometimes fell asleep on the couch watching old movies. He watched her play with her food and thought about how much his life had changed. Once, he'd spent nights listening for gunfire. Now, he listened for the sound of his daughter's laughter. He didn't miss the danger. He missed the peace he'd been fighting for all along, and now, sitting here with Layla, he finally had it. She looked up suddenly, her voice softer. "Dad, did you ever get scared when you were a soldier?" Marcus took a slow sip of his coffee before answering. "Every time," he said. "Being scared doesn't make you weak. It just means you care about living." Layla smiled at that, though she didn't fully understand. Marcus leaned back in the booth, letting the moment sink in. He'd traded missions and medals for mornings like this, simple, quiet, and real. Around them, the diner buzzed with normal life, laughter, forks clinking, stories being told over coffee. He looked out the window at the small flag swaying by the door and felt something he hadn't in years: content. For once, the war wasn't chasing him. He was just a father, sharing pancakes with his little girl. The soft ring of the diner door broke through their quiet moment. Marcus didn't look up at first, people came and went all the time. But Layla did. She watched as a group of Navy officers stepped inside, their polished boots clicking against the floor. The sound was sharp and sure, like they owned the space they walked into. Their uniforms were spotless, ribbons shining under the warm diner lights. They laughed loudly, talking about things only soldiers understood, their voices carrying the kind of confidence that came from men who'd been through fire and made it back. Marcus glanced at them once, his face unreadable. Old habits whispered inside him to keep still, stay unnoticed. He wasn't scared, just aware. That quiet awareness never really left men like him. Layla leaned closer and whispered, "Dad, they look like your old friends." Marcus smiled faintly. "Maybe," he said, keeping his tone light. "But those days are behind me." He turned his attention back to her, but a small shift in the room caught his eye. One of the officers, an older man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes, had stopped mid-laugh. His name tag read Admiral Whitman. He looked at Marcus for a long second, like he was trying to match a face to a memory buried deep down. The Admiral didn't say anything, just stared, puzzled, like something about that quiet man in the corner didn't fit with the rest of the room. Marcus knew that look. He'd seen it before, the look of someone's mind working to place a ghost. He calmly took another sip of his coffee, pretending not to notice, while Layla drew hearts on her napkin. The storm, though quiet, had already started forming. The group of officers settled into a booth a few tables away, their voices carrying across the diner. Layla couldn't help but glance over every few seconds, curious about their shiny badges and clean uniforms. "They look important," she whispered. Marcus smiled without turning his head. "Everyone's important to someone," he said, stirring his coffee. Still, he felt the weight of a familiar energy in the room, the kind that came with soldiers who hadn't yet learned to let go of the noise. Their laughter was easy, but their eyes were trained, scanning everything without realizing it. He recognized that. He used to be like that. One of the younger officers said something that made them all laugh, and then Admiral Whitman started telling a story. His voice carried just enough for Marcus to hear. "There was this old SEAL story," the Admiral said. "About a ghost. They called him Iron Ghost. Nobody ever saw him, but people swore he was real. Saved teams that should have been lost. Slipped in, slipped out, no trace." The others chuckled. "Sounds like a bedtime story," one joked. Marcus's hand paused on his coffee cup. Layla caught the name and giggled. "A ghost? For real?" she said. "Yeah," Marcus answered quietly, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Some ghosts never really leave." He said it softly enough that only she could hear. Across the room, the Admiral's laughter faded for just a moment as his eyes drifted back toward the quiet man in the corner. He couldn't explain it, but something about that calm face and steady posture tugged at an old memory, one that refused to stay buried. The Admiral finally pushed back his chair and stood. His men looked up, but he waved them off. "Be right back," he said, trying to sound casual, though something in his tone gave away his curiosity. He walked slowly toward the corner booth where Marcus and Layla sat. The chatter in the diner softened a little, like everyone could feel the shift in the air. Marcus noticed him coming. Of course, he'd noticed the moment the man stood. Still, he didn't move, just took another sip of his coffee while Layla played with her straw. "Excuse me," Admiral Whitman said politely when he reached the booth. "Sorry to bother you, but I swear I know you from somewhere." "You serve?" Marcus looked up, calm and steady. "Yes, sir," he said. "A long time ago." The Admiral smiled, leaning slightly on the edge of the table. "Navy?" Marcus nodded once. "That's right." Whitman chuckled. "Well, I'll be. Small world. What was your call sign? We all had one, right?" He said it like a friendly joke, something to break the ice. Layla looked up, curious. "What's a call sign?" she asked. "It's like a nickname soldiers use," Whitman explained with a grin. "Usually something tough, something that sticks." He turned back to Marcus, still smiling. "So what was yours?" For a second, Marcus didn't answer. He wiped a bit of syrup off Layla's cheek, then met the Admiral's eyes. His voice was quiet, even, but it cut through the room like a blade. "Iron Ghost." The Admiral froze. His smile faded. For a moment, he didn't seem to breathe. The diner fell silent, the kind of silence that makes your skin prickle. The younger officers at the other table stopped talking. Whitman's jaw tightened as his mind caught up with what he'd just heard. "Iron Ghost?" he repeated, almost in disbelief. Marcus didn't say another word. He didn't need to. The calm in his eyes said everything. For a long moment, Admiral Whitman just stood there, staring at Marcus like he was seeing a ghost for real. His mind was racing, pulling pieces together, old mission reports, whispered stories, names that were never written down. He finally spoke, his voice lower now. no trace of the easy laugh from before. "Iron Ghost," he said slowly. "That was, you?" Marcus gave a small nod, his expression calm. "That's what they used to call me. A long time ago." Whitman blinked, trying to make sense of it. "I thought that was a myth," he said quietly, half to himself. "Nobody ever saw you. They said you could move through a war zone without a sound. That you never left a man behind." Marcus didn't respond right away. He wasn't the kind to tell stories. Instead, he looked at his daughter, who was watching the two men with wide, confused eyes. "Daddy," she whispered, "what's Iron Ghost?" Marcus smiled softly. "Just a name from the past, baby. It doesn't mean much anymore." The Admiral sat down slowly, without asking. His voice had lost its power now, it carried something else. "Respect. Doesn't mean much," he said. "You were a legend. I heard about what you did in Helmand. No one thought it was humanly possible." Marcus shook his head. "Most of it wasn't just me, sir. There were a lot of good men who never came back." Whitman leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You disappeared. No record, no commendation, nothing. Just gone." Marcus looked down at his coffee. "I had other things to take care of," he said quietly, glancing at Layla. "Things that mattered more." The Admiral followed his eyes and finally understood. He nodded slowly. "Family." Marcus gave a faint smile. "The only mission that never ends." The air between them grew heavy but peaceful, the kind of silence that didn't need words to explain. Layla broke the silence first. She leaned forward, her small hands wrapped around her milkshake. "Dad," she asked softly, "did you save people?" Marcus looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "I tried to," he said. "Sometimes I did. Sometimes I couldn't." She reached across the table and touched his hand. "I think that's still brave." A small smile formed on his face, the kind that said more than words ever could. Across from them, Admiral Whitman lowered his eyes, his voice quiet. "She's right. You were brave. Braver than most of us." For the first time, the Admiral wasn't talking like a man of rank. He was talking like someone who finally understood what humility meant. "You know," he said after a pause, "I lost men out there. Men I couldn't save. But I remember reading mission reports, stories about someone who showed up when things were at their worst. They said he never asked for credit, never stayed long enough for anyone to say thank you." He looked at Marcus. "That was you, wasn't it?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He just said quietly, "I did what needed to be done." The Admiral nodded slowly. "You ever wonder why people like you never get medals?" Marcus shook his head. "Because people like me weren't supposed to exist." There was no anger in his voice, just calm truth. "Real heroes don't need to be seen," he added. Layla squeezed his hand, smiling proudly. "You're my hero, Daddy." Marcus's expression softened instantly. "That's the only title I'll ever need." The Admiral looked between them, his throat tightening. It wasn't often a man like him felt small, but at that moment, he did. Sitting across from a father and daughter, he realized what true strength looked like. It wasn't loud, and it didn't need a uniform. The Admiral sat there for a long time, looking down at his hands. The noise of the diner slowly returned, the clinking of forks, soft laughter, the sound of someone pouring coffee, but between these two men, time felt still. Finally, Whitman stood, straightening his uniform. He looked at Marcus, and his voice came out steady but full of feeling. "It's been an honor, Ghost." Marcus stood too, shaking his head with a faint smile. "It's just Marcus now, sir." The Admiral nodded, his respect clear. "Well, Marcus, thank you. For everything." He turned to his officers, who had been pretending not to stare. "That man," he said quietly, "is the reason some of us are still here. Show some respect." None of them said a word, but every one of them straightened in their seats. Marcus sat back down, finishing his coffee as if nothing had happened. Layla looked up at him, her voice small but curious. Do you think he'll tell people about you? Marcus smiled gently. Doesn't matter if he does. Some things are meant to stay quiet. Layla nodded, then grinned. I still think Iron Ghost sounds cool. Marcus laughed softly. Then let's keep that between us, soldier. She saluted playfully, and he ruffled her hair. They left a few minutes later, sunlight spilling across the diner floor as the door opened. The Admiral watched them go, his face thoughtful, almost humbled. Outside, Marcus helped Layla into their old pickup and started the engine. She leaned her head against his shoulder as they drove off, the road stretching out ahead. For once, he felt completely at peace. No more missions. No more orders. Just life. He looked down at his daughter's small hand resting over his, and the truth settled quietly in his chest. The greatest battles weren't fought in war, they were fought in the heart. And for the first time, he knew he had truly won.